Is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez as we talk about President Obama's announcement yesterday about his plans to close Guantánamo.
Well, I want to ask about some of the comments made about Guantánamo during this election season. Speaking Tuesday before the Nevada caucus, Republican presidential contender and Florida Senator Marco Rubio criticized Obama's plan, repeated what he said on the campaign trail about Guantánamo.
Not only are we not going to close Guantánamo, when I'm president, if we capture a terrorist alive, they're not getting a court hearing in Manhattan. They're not going to be sent to Nevada. They're going to Guantánamo, and we're going to find out everything they know.
Rubio speaking Tuesday at a GOP debate earlier this month. Rubio said he would put more people in Guantánamo.
Here's the bigger problem with all this. We're not interrogating anybody right now. Guantánamo is being emptied by this president. We should be putting people into Guantánamo, not emptying it out, and we shouldn't be releasing these killers who are rejoining the battlefield against the United States.
Meanwhile, speaking Tuesday, Republican presidential frontrunner Donald Trump vowed to load up Guantánamo with, quote, some bad dudes.
This morning, I watched President Obama talking about Gitmo, right? Guantanamo Bay, which, by the way, we are keeping open, And we're going to load it up with some bad dudes. Believe me, we're going to load it up.
So I'd like to ask Bahar Azmi, what do you think of the way the debate has gone in the Republican among Republican candidates about Guantánamo?
Well, I think it's sort of craven grandstanding that we've seen with a lot of issues from the Republican Party, including, deportation of 11 million immigrants or the exclusion of Muslims. It's all of a piece. And Donald Trump also, in embracing waterboarding, has basically admitted that he made an admission of war crimes that he would commit.
He said he would bring back waterboarding and bring back a hell of a lot worse than waterboarding.
That's right, which is a war crime. And so he might need to get legal counsel and additional political counsel to advise him about that. It's important to remember, as Obama first said, there was a political consensus around when Obama was elected, including from President Bush and John McCain, that the facility should be closed. And Obama, of course, is facing unreasonable obstruction and this really ugly political environment.
Ken Good, I wanted to ask you about this letter that was signed by 40 sheriffs in Colorado who wrote to the White House to oppose any plan to move the detainees from Guantánamo to prisons in Colorado. I think there's some speculation that most of the prisons used would be in Colorado.
Yeah, well, I think one thing that those sheriffs probably aren't aware of is that there's more than a dozen very high-profile international terrorists already in Colorado prisons. Some of the most dangerous terrorists that the United States has ever captured. Ramzi Youssef, the man who was responsible for the first World Trade Center bombing attempt in 1993. One former Guantanamo detainee, Ahmed Gilani, who was convicted in a New York courtroom of his role in the 1998 East Africa embassy bombings, 4 of Gilani's co-conspirators in that attack. Zacarias Moussaoui, who was captured before 9/11 and was, at the time at least, thought to be the 20th hijacker. Richard Reed, who was tried to blow up an inbound airliner into the United States with a bomb in his shoes. These guys are already in prisons in Colorado, or at least in one prison in Colorado, the penitentiary at Florence. And so the notion that bringing Guantanamo detainees into the United States and locating them in either maximum security U.S. prisons or inside secure military bases is somehow a threat to the American people just doesn't hold water. And it's not something that I've ever understood. And nobody who is a critic of this has ever actually explained why it is dangerous to have dangerous people in prison. Because if that's true, we've got a real problem, because there's a lot of dangerous people in prison.
Well, Ken, so the bottom line is that your sense is that no matter what the president said this week, that at the end of this year, we're still going to have prisoners in Guantanamo because of the continued obstruction of Congress, or refusal of Congress to change the law.
Well, I don't think that's necessarily true. What I think is definitely true is Congress isn't going to change the law, and the likelihood of anybody coming to the United States is extremely low. But that doesn't mean that Guantanamo has to stay open, because I do think that there are other options than this preferred plan than what the president has laid out for closing Guantanamo, and that is using more of the process of trying to find other countries to take some of these detainees, either in resettlement or trying for third country prosecutions, or looking at some of the detainees that were actually captured in connection with the Afghan war, which, as was said earlier, was certainly not the majority of the detainees, but there are some detainees that were captured in connection with that conflict. There were probably about a dozen that were captured trying to flee the Tora Bora situation, and there were probably another 10 or so that are at Guantanamo there who were actually enemy fighters in that conflict. It's possible that those detainees could be sent back to Afghanistan in a similar process to what the United States did when it turned over the Bagram detention facility to Afghan control. So what I'm saying is that going into the United States, detainees are probably not going there because of the legal and political restrictions right now, but that doesn't mean that we have to give up. There are other options out there.
Finally, military tribunals in the minute we have left. You mentioned military tribunals, but what is your problem with them?
They are a second-class system of justice that has largely been created in a preordained way to secure convictions, and some proof of their so that's why they're unjust. They're also unworkable insofar as they've been in existence for since the Bush administration in multiple forms, and because they're so novel and because they're kind of made up as they go along, are not a valid system of justice. And the system is toppling sort of year by year as courts are reviewing kind of non-international law charges that they're trying to bring. And as the president said, it's been 15 years and there hasn't been any trial of...
The president criticized them, but also said they would continue.
That's right. That's right. And he should just more fully embrace fair Article III trials.
Well, we're going to leave it there, and we thank you so much for being with us, Bahar Azmi of the Center for Constitutional Rights and Ken Goode, Senior Fellow at the Center for American Progress.